Alright, everything we're about to look at is from the version 1.0.3, which I'm guessing includes a launch day patch. As a massive Star Wars fan, I was really keen to play Star Wars Outlaws, particularly after it was essentially slated at launch for having numerous issues to do with stealth, and then the game received a number of patches, and I don't remember seeing many outlets revisit it, because they fixed the stealth mechanics and also improved a lot of the other gameplay ones, but the reason you're probably here is to hear about performance on Nintendo Switch 2. So we're going to go through visuals, performance, we'll have a look at both docked and handheld modes as well as frame rates. Alright, Star Wars Outlaws on Nintendo Switch 2. Is it a crime against gaming? Well, my name's Mark Walker, welcome back to SwitchUp. Now let's find out. The first thing to note is the heavy-handed use of the Ubisoft Online Ubiconnect service. Straight away you are essentially demanded to sign into that before you can play the game, and I don't know if there's any way of getting around it. So yeah, you will need a Ubiconnect account. You can do that through the game or you can do that online and log in. The Switch 2 edition includes the base game as well as all of the Season Pass content. So story packs, which was the Wild Card and a Pirate's Fortune DLCs, but there is a little more exclusive content as well for the Nintendo version, and for those that have pre-ordered there is an early purchase bonus, but you have to do a few little hurdles and then it's available on your ship. They're just some cosmetics, so nothing really to write home about. Now performance then. First I want to start with handheld because we have a lot of handheld players in the audience. I myself love playing these types of games in handheld, or at least I would if there were more of them. So let's take a look. I think you'll agree handheld is looking okay. I believe we have a 720p resolution here. I'm not sure if it's dynamic, it doesn't seem to be. It may use some form of upscaling to make it look like 1080, but you can certainly see a little blurring, but not really as much as I was expecting, and the same goes for performance. It seems to be able to maintain its 30 frames per second performance target way more consistently than the rumours would have led us to believe with the pre-launch looks. And look, that could be down to the version played, I'm sure it was, but still sometimes it's better just to wait a little. And here clearly if you're playing in handheld you're in for a quite nice experience. Things like lighting and shadow particularly have carried across really nicely. I stumbled across a couple of funny little locations. There's one where there's a disco for all of the cleaning droids going on, and the different lights, it really does pop even when playing in handheld and on an LCD screen. Now is it comparative to other versions? Well, yes and no. You have a lower resolution image, but you've got a lot of the lighting effects from the medium settings of the PC version of the game. Not all of them of course, and you will see some artifacting, especially on things like hair. It looks to be using some form of temporal anti-aliasing, and I do see some jaggies even when playing in handheld mode, but as far as playability, this is more than playable. It's actually a good handheld version in my opinion. So then we jump over to docked performance. Now it's my understanding that we're looking at 1080p or thereabouts, with potential of upscaling. Now there are a couple of things first to note. The Nintendo Switch version, as I may have mentioned already, has gyro controls. You'll need to access these from the control options right down the bottom, and they're a really good implementation. They've done that thing where there's almost a buffer that stops your handshake and things like that, but allows for those proper movements. It actually takes quite a bit to get this right, and this is very well done. Things like headshots are easy to pull off, and as someone who finds it so much easier to use that, it's great to see quite a bit of customization. So you can change which joycon you use, you can change the axis to suit your preferred style, and it's also used for other areas if you want, like getting Nix to search the environment for items. As well as this, we have a full photo mode, so you can go in, take some nice shots of the locations, and I will have used it as well for the thumbnail of this video. Now, as annoying as Ubisoft can be, their accessibility options are on point. They've added a 150% HUD size option for playing in handheld mode, so that things like on-screen text will be larger, the HUD itself obviously is larger, and by default that is actually switched on. You can switch that off if you rather have more screen real estate. There are other accessibility options to aid things like the lockpick in game, and for those with color blindness, you've got 3 options there as well, including a high contrast mode, audio descriptions, and more. So yeah, as far as accessibility goes, this is one of the most complete packages I've seen, and clearly targeted for Switch users, as it includes touchscreen compatibility as well. So when you're playing in handheld, you can select UI elements, and some of those mini games you can actually slide your fingers around on the screen. One other area where the developers have clearly put the effort in is with HD Rumble. It's some of the best I've felt. Individual footsteps can be felt, and it's a really detailed implementation across the board. So then docked mode. Well, straight away you've got 2 major options that make a big difference to the way the game feels. By default, the image is set to fill the entire screen. Now this is good on the one hand because it fills your entire screen on most traditional TV sets, but if you have an ultra wide monitor, or if you prefer the look of that cinematic style, you can switch to a 21:9 aspect ratio that actually increases the field of view dramatically. It looks way better if you have the TV to support it, and maybe even if you don't. What I wouldn't switch on though is the cinematic lens. This just seems to really blow the field of view out so you can't see hardly anything, and the further you zoom into the game like this, the more the visual anomalies and slight issues might show up. Other options though are things like film grain. I found that that's a preference thing. I didn't mind it, my daughter absolutely hated it. As mentioned, 30 frames per second is the order of the day, and yes, it really does maintain that quite well. In fact, you won't see any major drops or stutters until you reach more built up areas. Even when you first arrive on the open planet, where you gain access to your first vehicle, it's still quite impressive how well it maintains its performance. Performance aside then, how does the game look? Well, that's mixed. In some places it really does look great, like surprisingly so. Certain locations you've got sharp textures on the ground, reasonable lighting, even some soft shadows remain intact, and obviously with the good performance, that actually ties together into feeling like something that's polished. So if we jump between a few different locations, you get a good idea of that overall image quality.
Ready to go?
Just after the prologue, when you're allowed to go around the planet, that was the real test for me, to see how it would hold up visually. And I think good is a reasonable description of it. Yes, if you look carefully, you can see aliasing, you can see where there's some scaling being done to bring everything together. And of course, while some of the soft shadows look nice, tertiary objects in the world, their shadows have been culled and brought right down. In fact, I should have said that about Handheld as well. It's one area you really will notice a difference, and that's in character shadows, and shadows upon models as well have been brought to a lower level. Temporal anti-aliasing isn't too heavy-handed, which unlike Tony Hawk's where it would just be like a ghost effect on everything, here by default, motion blur is actually switched off, so you don't get such heavy-handed temporal effects when the character's in motion, which can cause that ghosting image, but the hair is the area where you will see that we are potentially working with lower resolution images. Cutscenes, those that are pre-rendered, they seem okay to me, bar a few strange visual anomalies, and that goes across the whole game. I did wonder if it was an Unreal Engine title, but it's not. It uses that Snowdrop proprietary engine, I believe, because sometimes Unreal does those white flashes when you quickly turn. But actually, I think overall, this is handling things quite nicely on Switch too. That engine can utilize things like dust and particles quite well, without too much of a performance hit, but that is pared back when playing in handheld as opposed to docked mode. And the reflective qualities of the water quality is still okay. So in conclusion then, if you're thinking about picking it up on Nintendo Switch 2, well, there are a couple of considerations outside of visuals. While it's I think $49.99, which isn't too bad, it doesn't have a proper physical, which is just a pain in the butt. But if you're a digital only buyer, What's really impressive is the size that they've crammed the game into. It fits into 20.2 gigabytes, which is nothing really. So if you're after a version that you can play in handheld that has gyro support, touchscreen, reasonable visual quality, decent performance, actually, to my great surprise, Ubisoft and the dev team have delivered. And to get that type of compression, sometimes it can have a major impact on audio quality. So I think it's probably best we just take a little listen. If you've got headphones, now's the time to stick them on.
You alive back there, buddy? I know. What are we doing?
Prepare! We know you helped Kate. Open up! You wanna live? Tell her.
To my ear, while there may be some downsampling, it's not so heavy-handed that the game sounds fuzzy. So across the board, bar a couple of very minor stutters, and yes, some understandable downgrades in certain visual areas, Star Wars Outlaws is decent on Switch 2, and much better than the version of the game that you would have heard about. I'll get my full review of it out once I've rolled credits, but for now, hopefully this helps with anything you may need to know. Alright, thank you to our Patreons, our members, all of you that enjoy the content, and as always, for all things Switch, all the time, keep it Switch up. Cheers guys, see ya!